In the busy and beautiful city of Abuja, there lived a young woman named Zuri Okonjo. She was an event planner with big dreams and a heart full of love. Life wasn't easy, but she believed that love could make anything possible. Every morning she woke up early, running from one client to another, decorating halls, arranging flowers, making sure every wedding she planned was perfect. And through it all, she had one person who kept her going, Tund, the man she loved with all her heart. When Tund had nothing, Zuri was there. She cooked for him when he couldn't afford a meal, helped him pay his rent, and stayed up late helping him polish his CV. She believed in his dreams more than he did. Her friends sometimes teased her, saying she loved him too much, but Zuri just smiled. "One day, all this love will come back to me," she would say. To her, Tund wasn't just her boyfriend, he was her future. She imagined their wedding, their home, their children. She believed love could survive anything. She didn't know that sometimes, love can blind you to the storm that's quietly coming your way. Everything started changing the moment Tund got promoted at his company. He was no longer the humble man who used to hold Zuri's hand and talk about their future under the stars. Suddenly, he was wearing expensive suits, using words like networking and connections, and spending most of his nights at corporate events. His messages, once filled with love and laughter, became short and cold. "I'm busy," he would say. Or worse, he wouldn't reply at all. Zuri noticed the change. The warmth in his eyes had turned into something distant, almost proud. When she tried to surprise him with home-cooked food, he smiled politely but didn't even finish his meal. "You should learn to dress like the women I meet at work," he once said, without realizing how much those words cut her. She laughed softly to hide her pain, but inside, her heart broke a little. He started comparing her simple lifestyle, her modest clothes, her small apartment, her love for local markets, to the rich, glittering women who wore designer gowns and spoke with accents. The man who once loved her simplicity now saw it as a flaw. Sometimes, Zuri sat by her window at night, staring at her phone, waiting for his message. She told herself he was just busy, that this phase would pass. She remembered how he used to send long texts saying, "You're my peace, my queen." Now she was lucky to get a one-word reply. Her heart knew something was wrong, but her mind refused to believe it. She still defended him to her friends, still smiled when his name came up, still prayed for him every night. But deep down she could feel it. The man she once knew was slipping away, and she didn't know how to stop him. Then came Madame Leona, the woman everyone in Abuja seemed to talk about. She was beautiful, powerful, and rich beyond imagination. She owned several businesses, drove expensive cars, and always arrived at events surrounded by photographers and admiration. Everything about her screamed success. Her confidence filled every room she entered. And that was the night Tund met her, at a company gala that Zuri had helped him prepare for. Zuri remembered that evening so clearly. She had helped him pick out his suit, even ironed it with care, teasing him that he looked like a movie star. "Go and make connections," she said proudly, not knowing that he was about to make one that would shatter her heart. At the gala, under the soft glow of chandeliers and slow music, Madame Leona noticed Tund. She liked his charm, his ambition, his hunger for more. And from that moment, everything began to change. First, it was little things. Tund started dressing differently, speaking differently, even smelling different, expensive cologne, new shoes, new confidence. Then came the lies, small at first. "My phone died. I was in a meeting. You worry too much." But Zuri could feel the distance growing, like a slow storm creeping into her life. Her calls went unanswered. The sweet morning texts stopped. The plans they used to make turned into excuses. One evening, she saw a picture on social media. Tund standing beside Madame Leona at a business event, smiling like he had found his new world. Zuri stared at the photo for a long time, her heart heavy and her throat tight. She didn't need an explanation. The picture said it all. The man she had built dreams with was now standing beside a woman who had everything she didn't: money, power, and status. Her world grew quiet, not because there were no words, but because no words could describe the pain of watching love slip away, not into the arms of another woman, but into the hands of wealth. That evening felt colder than usual, even though the Abuja sky was full of lights. Zuri had been waiting outside a restaurant where Tund asked her to meet him. She had a small box of his favorite snacks in her hand, puff puff and suya, the one she used to buy when they couldn't afford fancy dinners. She thought maybe he wanted to talk, maybe they could fix what was broken. But when he arrived, his eyes told her everything before his mouth did. He looked sharp in a new designer suit, the kind she knew she hadn't bought. His cologne was strong, his smile forced. "Zuri," he started softly, avoiding her eyes. "You're a good woman. You've been there for me when I had nothing. But I need someone who matches my future." The words hit her like thunder. She blinked, hoping she heard wrong. "Matches your future?" she repeated, her voice shaking. He sighed. "Leona understands my world now. She moves in circles I want to be in. I can't stay stuck in the past." Zuri felt her whole body go numb. Every memory, the nights they prayed together, the dreams they shared, the laughter, the struggles, all flashed before her like a cruel movie. She wanted to speak, to scream, to remind him of everything they had built, but her voice refused to come out. Tears filled her eyes, blurring the man who once promised her forever. When he finally stood up and walked away, she just watched him go, hand in hand with the woman who wore diamonds, leaving behind the girl who once fed him hope and faith. The puff-puff box slipped from her hands and fell to the ground. Cars passed, lights flickered, the city kept moving, but for Zuri time stopped. That night, she walked home slowly, her heart breaking with every step. She had loved him with everything she had, but in the end, love wasn't enough for a man who couldn't see her worth. And that was the night she learned sometimes the person you help rise is the one who teaches you how to fall. That night, Zuri cried until her pillow was soaked and her voice was gone. Her small apartment, once filled with laughter and dreams, now felt like a cage of memories. Every corner reminded her of Tund, the chair where he used to sit and tease her, the kitchen where they cooked together, even the blanket they once shared on rainy nights. It was as if the ghost of their love still lived there, watching her break in silence. Days turned into nights and nights turned into endless hours of staring at her phone, waiting for a message that never came. She tried to delete his photos but couldn't. Each time she saw his smile, the tears returned. She stopped eating, stopped answering calls, stopped believing that love could be kind. Even her reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar. Tired eyes, swollen face, and a heart trying to stay alive. But pain has a strange way of birthing strength. One evening, as she sat by her window watching the city lights flicker, something inside her shifted. She wiped her tears and whispered to herself, "He chose gold over love. Let life show him what shines longer." Her voice trembled, but her spirit didn't. That night, she packed everything that reminded her of him, the letters, the photos, the small gifts, and placed them in a box. She didn't burn it, she didn't throw it away. She just closed it and tucked it deep inside her wardrobe, as if saying this chapter is over. When morning came, Zuri stood in front of her mirror and tied her scarf neatly. Her eyes were still red, but there was something new in them, a quiet fire. Heartbreak had not destroyed her. It had simply awakened her. She didn't know where life would take her next, but she knew one thing for sure. She would never beg anyone to see her worth again. Months passed, and Zuri's business kept growing faster than she ever imagined. She was now one of the most sought-after event planners in Abuja, and her company Zuri Creations had started getting clients from other cities too. One morning, she received an email from a luxury wedding agency in Lagos. The client wanted only her to handle a high-profile wedding. The pay was huge, the location was grand, and the event promised to be one of the biggest of the year. Zuri smiled as she read the details, feeling proud of how far she had come. But life, as always, had its surprises. When she walked into the first meeting at the five-star hotel, holding her design portfolio in confidence like a crown, her steps froze. Sitting at the table across from her was Tund, and beside him, glowing in diamonds and pride, was Madame Leona. For a moment her heart stopped. The world went silent. Tund looked shocked. His eyes widened, his lips parted slightly, as if words had escaped him. Leona, on the other hand, smiled faintly, adjusting her golden bracelet. "So you're the famous Zuri everyone talks about," she said with a hint of mockery. Zuri's throat went dry, but she managed to smile politely. "Yes," she replied softly, "I am." As the meeting continued, Zuri listened carefully, took notes and spoke professionally, never once letting her emotions show. Inside she was trembling, not out of pain but from the power of the moment. Fate had brought her face to face with the very people who once broke her heart, and now they needed her. When the meeting ended, Tund tried to catch her eye, but she didn't look back. She walked out with quiet grace, her heels clicking on the marble floor like a victory drumbeat. Outside, she took a deep breath, her heart still racing. Destiny, she realized, didn't forget. Sometimes it waits, just long enough to let you rise before bringing the past to your doorstep, so you can see how much you've changed. From the very first day of the wedding preparations, Zuri promised herself one thing. She would not let emotions ruin her professionalism. She would do her job, and she would do it perfectly. So she smiled, took notes, and gave instructions to her team as if Tund was just another client. Inside, her heart raced, but on the outside, she was calm, graceful, composed, and strong. Each time she entered the hall, she could feel his eyes on her. Tund tried to start small conversations, asking unnecessary questions just to get her attention, but Zuri stayed polite and distant. "Everything is under control, sir," she would say softly before walking away. Every word she spoke carried quiet confidence. Every movement showed how much she had grown. She didn't need revenge. Her success spoke louder than anything she could ever say. She poured her heart into the project, not for them, but for herself. Every flower she placed, every candle she lit, every fabric she chose. It was her silent message to the world that no pain could break her. The hall looked breathtaking, a royal blend of modern luxury and traditional African beauty. Guests gasped in admiration, and photographers couldn't stop taking pictures. Tund watched her from across the room, his eyes filled with guilt and regret. He saw the woman he had once abandoned, now confident, radiant, untouchable. He realized she no longer looked at him with love or pain, but with peace. And that hurt more than any words she could have said. Leona, however, noticed everything. She caught the way Tund's eyes followed Zuri, and it made her uneasy. Still, she kept her proud smile and whispered to him, "She does her job well, doesn't she?" pretending not to care. But deep down, even she could feel it. Zuri's quiet strength filled the room like music, beautiful and undeniable. In that moment, Zuri didn't need to prove anything. Her silence had power. Her calm was louder than any revenge. She was no longer the girl who cried. Behind all the sparkle and smiles, Madame Leona's life wasn't as perfect as everyone believed. People called her a successful businesswoman, a woman who had it all: beauty, power, and money. But the truth was darker. Her wealth wasn't built from hard work or honesty. It came from manipulation, from using people, from playing dangerous games behind closed doors. She knew how to charm powerful men and twist situations to her advantage. That was her true business, not the company she claimed to own. Tund had no idea. He saw only the luxury cars, the designer gowns, and the respect she commanded. To him, she was the life he had always dreamed of, a life of status and success. He believed she would open doors for him, introduce him to powerful people, and help him climb higher. But what he didn't realize was that he wasn't her partner. He was her next pawn. Leona treated him well at first. She showered him with expensive gifts, took him on trips and made him feel like a king. But little by little, she began to control everything: his finances, his schedule, even who he could talk to. Tun started to feel trapped but couldn't admit it. He had traded love for luxury, and now the price was his freedom. Zuri noticed something strange too. During the wedding preparations, she saw the fake smiles, the tense glances, and the way Leona's laughter sometimes sounded forced. She could sense that behind the diamonds, there was trouble brewing. Still, she did her job perfectly, staying professional. The wedding day came full of glitz and glamour, but beneath the gold there was rot. Guests clapped, cameras flashed, and Tun smiled beside his bride. But his eyes looked empty. He didn't know it yet, but the woman he left everything for was about to destroy everything he had left. Because gold that isn't real doesn't shine for long. And soon, the truth behind Leona's empire would begin to crack, piece by piece, until everything turned to dust. Started slowly, just whispers at first. A few weeks after the wedding, people began talking about Madame Leona's business. There were rumors that her company had been involved in fraud, that money had gone missing, that government officials were investigating her accounts. At first, Tun didn't believe it. He laughed it off, saying people were just jealous of their success. But as the days passed, the whispers turned into headlines. News broke across social media. Leona Group under investigation for financial crimes. Suddenly, everything began to fall apart. Bank accounts were frozen. Her cars were taken by the authorities. Her properties were sealed. Reporters crowded her gate, and old friends disappeared overnight. Tun watched in shock as the world he had chosen over love collapsed right before his eyes. The luxury apartment he once flaunted was gone. The credit card stopped working. The fancy dinners, the designer suits, the parties all vanished like smoke. Leona turned cold and distant. The woman who once called him my king now shouted at him like a servant. "You're useless. You brought me bad luck," she screamed when the stress got too much. Tun tried to calm her, but deep down he knew she had never really loved him. He was just another piece in her game. One evening, when he returned home from trying to speak to a lawyer, he found the house empty. Leona had disappeared. The guards were gone. The house had been locked by the authorities. For the first time, he felt what it meant to lose everything. He had traded a woman who loved him for one who used him, and now he was left with nothing. That night, Tun sat on the curb outside, his clothes soaked from the rain, clutching his phone, scrolling through his contacts, and stopping at one name he had sworn to forget: Zuri. The same woman he had once told wasn't rich enough. The same woman who had loved him when he had nothing. But now the tables had turned, and destiny was watching us. It was late at night, and the rain was falling heavily against the windows. Zuri was in her apartment, sitting quietly with a cup of tea, reviewing her next big event plan. Life had finally become peaceful again. She was busy, successful, and free. The sound of rain comforted her, a reminder that storms eventually pass. But then, suddenly, there was a knock at her door. It was soft at first, then louder. She frowned, wondering who would visit her at that hour. When she opened the door, her heart stopped. There, standing in the rain, was Tun. His clothes were soaked, his hair messy, his eyes tired and full of shame. The man who once walked with pride beside a rich woman now looked like a shadow of himself. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Zuri, I made a mistake." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain poured behind him, and the sound filled the silence between them. Zuri just stared at him, not with anger, not even with pity, but with a calm she never knew she could have. Her heart didn't ache anymore. It was quiet, steady, and strong. Tun looked around the apartment, noticing how different everything was: the new furniture, the awards on the shelf, the calm aura of a woman who had rebuilt her life. He looked back at her, his eyes begging for forgiveness, for a second chance, for anything. But Zuri didn't need to say a word. Her silence spoke everything. "I have moved on. I have become the woman you thought you wanted, but without you." She finally sighed softly and said, "You should come inside before you catch a cold." She handed him a towel and a cup of tea, the same kindness she had always shown, but now it came from strength, not love. And as he sat there, drenched and broken, Tun finally understood. The woman he had left behind had become everything he once dreamed of, but she no longer needed him to complete that dream. Zuri placed the steaming cup of tea in front of Tund and sat across from him quietly. The soft sound of rain filled the room as they both sat in the heavy silence that carried years of memories between them. He looked around, noticing how peaceful her home felt. Warm lighting, elegant decor, everything calm and in order. It was a reflection of her. Graceful, stable, complete. He took a slow sip of the tea, his hands shaking slightly. Zuri, he said in a low voice, I don't even know where to start. I lost everything. Leona. She used me. I thought I was choosing success, but I chose destruction. His voice broke as he spoke, his pride slowly melting away. Zuri listened quietly, her face calm. She didn't interrupt him or remind him of what he had done. She didn't need to. Life had already taught him what she could never say. After a while she spoke softly. You left me for wealth, Tund, she said, her voice calm but firm. But you lost peace. And peace is something money can never buy. Her words hit him harder than any slap could. He lowered his eyes, feeling the weight of regret sink deeper. After a long pause he looked up again. I'm trying to start over, he said hesitantly. I was wondering if maybe you could help me find work at your company. I'll do anything, Zuri. I just need a chance. Zuri took a deep breath and gave him a gentle smile, but there was power behind her eyes. Tund, she said softly, I don't hire from the past. I build for the future. Her words were kind but final. She wasn't being cruel. She was protecting her peace. He nodded slowly, understanding what she meant. She had forgiven him, but she would never go back. As he stood up to leave, Zuri walked him to the door. Take care of yourself, she said. And as the rain fell behind him once again, Tund realized he had just lost something far greater than love. He had lost his chance to belong in the life of the woman who had become everything he once dreamed of. Zuri stood quietly by the door, watching Tund struggle to find the right words. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes filled with regret. For a moment she saw flashes of the man he used to be. The one who once laughed with her, dreamed with her, loved her. But that man was long gone, replaced by someone who had learned his lessons the hard way. Still, she couldn't find it in her heart to be cruel. She walked over, picked up his wet jacket from the chair, and handed it to him gently. You should go before the rain gets heavier, she said softly. Tund looked at her, surprised by her calmness. Maybe he expected anger or bitterness. Maybe he thought she would shout, remind him of all the pain he caused. But instead she was kind in a way that made him realize how small he had become. Zuri, he whispered, his voice breaking. I don't deserve your kindness. She gave a faint smile and replied, no one deserves pain forever, Tund. Life has already taught you enough. Her tone wasn't cold, it was peaceful, mature, almost motherly. That was the difference now. She wasn't the broken girl begging to be loved. She was the woman who had learned to let go with grace. She walked him to the door, opened it, and for a moment they both stood in silence, staring at the rain falling outside. I wish you luck, she said gently. Find yourself again. Just this time do it right. He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. He wanted to say more, to ask for another chance, but he could see in her calm face that it was over. When he stepped out, Zuri watched him disappear into the rain before closing the door quietly. She didn't feel anger or satisfaction, only peace, because true strength wasn't in revenge or harsh words. It was in forgiving without forgetting, in wishing someone well and still walking away taller. In that moment Zuri realized grace was her greatest power. Months passed, and life unfolded in a way even Zuri couldn't have imagined. Her company, Zuri Creations, became one of the most sought-after event brands in Africa. Her designs were now seen at presidential banquets, celebrity weddings, and international fashion events. Reporters called her the woman who turned heartbreak into power. When she walked into a room, people noticed, not because of diamonds or designer clothes, but because of the quiet confidence that surrounded her like light. One bright morning, her assistant ran into her office holding a glossy magazine. Ma'am, you need to see this. On the cover of African Business Queens magazine was Zuri's radiant smile, her eyes full of grace and strength. The headline read, Zuri Okonjo, the woman who built an empire from broken pieces. She couldn't help but laugh softly as she traced her fingers over the cover. The same woman who once cried in a small apartment was now inspiring thousands across the continent. Meanwhile, somewhere in the same city, Tun sat at a corner cafe scrolling through his phone. He saw the same magazine cover, his heart sinking as he read the article about Zuri's success. He remembered the words she once told him. He chose gold over love. Let life show him what shines longer. And now he finally understood. The world had forgotten him, but it celebrated her. Zuri didn't celebrate to prove anything to him. She didn't rise to make him regret. She simply worked, healed, and trusted her journey. And in doing so, she became everything she once prayed to be. Not because she chased revenge, but because she chose peace. As she looked out her office window that evening, the city lights reflected in her eyes. She whispered softly, "I didn't need to win over him. I just needed to win over my pain." In that moment, she knew she had truly won, without even trying. Standing on her hotel balcony in Cape Town, Zuri let the cool evening breeze brush against her skin. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, sparkling under the setting sun. She took a deep breath, feeling peace in every heartbeat. This was freedom. Not the loud kind that shouts victory, but the quiet kind that smiles at everything life tried to break. As she looked down at the city lights below, she thought about how far she had come, from the girl who once cried on her apartment floor to the woman who now flew across continents, creating beauty for others and building an empire from her pain. Her laughter was soft, but it carried years of strength, lessons, and healing. She picked up her phone, scrolling through messages from clients in Paris, Lagos, and Nairobi, each one praising her creativity. For a moment she remembered Tund, his words, his betrayal, and the rich woman he chose. But instead of bitterness, she felt gratitude. Because if he hadn't left, she might never have found herself. With a gentle smile she whispered to the wind, "He left me for a rich woman, but she stole his everything, and life gave me back more than gold." The breeze carried her words into the night, and her laughter followed, soft, powerful, and free. It wasn't just laughter anymore. It was the sound of a woman who had finally won her own peace.